Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of We Them Niggas. I am excited to introduce the guest for this episode, Parker Jay-Pachirat, who I connected with after tweeting that I wanted someone to vouch for me to join Boys Club, a social DAO committed to bringing new voices to the new internet. I don't remember exactly what I tweeted, something along the lines of, I'm looking for someone to vouch for me on my application to Boys Club. I think they're modeling some fire community building, something I still agree with, and I'm hoping to get to participate and interact with them as I take on my own journey into Web3 more seriously. And so it's been like a year of me figuring out like who am I as like a Web3 person, a crypto bro, whatever you want to call me, and like thinking what does a professional role look like for me in this world I'm like pretty unfamiliar with, but I feel like I want to know about. So I've joined the community. I connected with you since you supported me in becoming a part of the community, and I really wasn't sure with like how to start engaging, and I felt like that was a natural first step. And I thought it was super dope to learn that you recently graduated from college yourself in 2021, and seeing your involvement in the space when I connected with you after only a year being out of undergrad, I was like impressed and also like affirmed that like maybe something I could do here was just like take time to explore and get familiar. I'm hoping this interview can also help some of my friends who are still in college and other college students get a sense of how this space might interest them too. Moving on, you minted my podcast trailer, which I posted as an NFT like sometime in the summer last year on Zora as a free collectible. And you were actually the first person to mint the podcast episode, which I appreciate, or I guess the trailer, whatever. And I appreciate the gesture, and I appreciate you accepting my invitation. So I'm really interested to hear what prompted you to mint my NFT and accept my invitation to be a guest on here.
Yeah, well, so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I remember your tweet and reading it and just being like, wow, this person seems really energized around the idea of Boys Club. And also just, I loved your energy and just like putting that tweet out into the world, forward facing. And then I remember we had a quick sort of intro call, just like getting to know each other. I think you wanted to learn more about like my journey into the space. And I remember you telling me a bit about your background and your interests and also what you were interested in within Web3. And yeah, I just got a sense of like, okay, this person is really hungry, really excited, really passionate. And I was really aligned with some of your like mission and vision for what you wanted to see more of in the space. And then I also know what it's like to break into a new space. So I remember when I was like in college and graduating college, I was doing so many calls with people, like trying to connect with as many people as I could in the industry and field that I'm in now. And so like having gone through that and knowing what that was like, I definitely like, you know, saw your talent and energy around it and wanted to support and like elevate your platform and your work as much as possible.
I appreciate that so much. I appreciate you saying I'm talented. That means a lot. And I appreciate you felt aligned with the vision as well. I definitely felt like from afar, Boys Club seemed to be like connecting people, connecting women specifically. And I think it's cool that you guys are making spaces for people to connect. I feel like that's like one of the most kind of important things we can do as people is like create spaces for people to connect and get familiar with one another. And it's definitely something I'm interested in doing, connecting like more people of color to one another, creating more spaces where we can have conversations about the public interest, what is pertinent and important and pressing for Black people specifically to be talking about that maybe we don't have the spaces to discuss or like the resources to feel like we can really be informed about. And so I'm hoping this podcast and like this platform that I'm building can kind of operate as a place to facilitate discussions that kind of serve that interest and platform people like yourselves who are also interested in like the politics of the public interest. So yeah, thanks for coming on again. And I feel like I know like Black culture is super interesting to me, super important to me. I feel like for me, Black culture is hip hop more than anything else, which I feel like is a shame because I feel like for my mom and my grandma, like that's not the case at all. And so I feel like it's like a very like Maceo-centric way to approach things maybe, but I feel like people's like cultural situation, something that I've definitely become more fascinated with since undergrad, thinking about like how do particular people operate in the world, what are their concerns, what do they feel like is pertinent and pressing, and like by way of that, what do they focus on in like their day-to-day life as a community, what do they value, what do they give space to, and what do they not give space to. So I definitely want to give you the opportunity to speak to like what does your cultural background look like, and how does that show up with you like now day to day?
Yeah. So I'm 1/4 Thai. My dad is half Thai, and 3/4 Norwegian and Irish. I've definitely had a lot more cultural immersion in my Thai culture than the Norwegian side. And growing up pretty much from age, I would say like 8 to about age 15, I would spend every summer in Thailand with my family, which was awesome. And it was just really great to, like, from a young age, get to understand the world outside of the US, and also like see the many different ways that people like live their lives in the world. So I've been like all over Thailand, from like the mountains to the rice fields to like the cities, and I think that really like helped shape my worldview and like understanding of my place in it. And so unfortunately, like more recently, I don't go back as much. But yeah, I did really appreciate like growing up and having the privilege of getting to travel and getting to like meet my family there and like learn more about that. And I would say like in terms of like cultural attitudes and beliefs, like I grew up in America, in New York City. So I don't really feel like I carry a lot of necessarily like baseline Thai culture with me in that sense. But I do know like a little bit of Thai, and I got to do a lot of like really awesome kind of immersive experiences when I was spending my summers in Thailand, like Thai dance lessons and language lessons and stuff like that. And yeah, it's like, it's really important to me to, when I have kids, you know, I want to give them the same experience of really developing a sense of like worldliness and understanding like not everyone's life and culture is like their own, because I think that's really important.
When you say that, like, what do you mean? Like, not everyone's life and culture is their own. Like, you just mean like that there are many cultures. Like, the world is multifaceted. Human experiences is like happening in different situations, like everywhere. It's kind of like what you're speaking to. Totally.
And like what your norms are growing up in America or wherever else are not, you know, you're universally applied. And I think that's really important also for developing a better sense of like what the world is like as a whole, and also understanding and really conceptualizing like a lot of the privileges that we have in the Western world and in America.
Can I ask, like 8 years old, I guess it's a while ago, but like when you, I guess, developing like this cross-cultural consciousness is kind of how I would phrase it. Like, what was that like? Like, what were like the first, like, was there culture shock, like kind of showing up in Thailand, having to like socialize, make friends, and like a whole new environment? Like, what was that like? Do you have cousins your age there?
Not cousins necessarily, but like some aunts and uncles. I wouldn't say, from my memory, like I don't remember having really a culture shock. And I think, I mean, obviously Thailand is very different than America or New York, but I do think because I was so young when I first went, you know, a lot of like the things that may have been like shocking or really different now were lesser so, just because I was exposed at like a younger age.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And like speaking to like your perspective on the world and like how you see your role in it and stuff like that, how would you describe like your perspective on like the global situation we're living in?
On the global situation?
Or like whatever that means to you. Like
I mean, I have a lot of thoughts geopolitically, but I guess like to scale it back, I think, yeah, like I said before, like just, you know, getting the opportunity to grow up in different parts of the world and experience different cultures. And still today, like I'm very grateful, like my job gives me the opportunity to travel a lot. And I think it's really helped me conceptualize and understand like a lot of my privilege in the world and like our privilege as Americans living in the Western world, and also like to recognize and appreciate the beauty of different cultures. And I, you know, I find it like funny. Some people are like shocked, for example, that, you know, some countries like eat dogs, but like worship or like consider cows or cattle like holy animals. And I think it's like really cool. to see those kinds of like stark differences and be able to appreciate them and just understand like just because someone has a different culture than you or is doing something in a different way that you're not familiar with, like it doesn't mean it's bad. And there's actually like beauty in that and like stuff we can all learn from each other.
I like the attitude. I feel like I've never heard someone say that like they think it's cool to like see like the stark differences in that way. Like I guess speaking to you specifically, talking to people eating dogs, like in my head that does feel like strange. And at the same time, like people can have different norms and like that's also fine and acceptable. And I agree with you. Like there are like I feel like pros and cons isn't the right word to use, but like there are like nuances that come with that are important to understand and appreciate that I feel like can be easily overlooked if you're like centering your own perspective. I feel like the way that I think about like the world and like why I'm interested in like different cultural like backgrounds or situations, I guess, is like I'm not very like politically like I would say attentive. I would say I'm trying to become more attentive. I feel like right now I'm like on my like what's happening in the world of Web3, what it will say to do for work kind of learning arc. But I definitely would like to become more politically informed, and I feel like it takes just as much, maybe if maybe less attention, but I feel like it takes definitely a lot of consistency to know what's going on in the world. And I guess it's definitely a privilege to not have to know what's going on in the world at some level. But I feel like the way that I see the world is a lot of people in like different circumstances and situations, like with different like personal and familial and cultural histories as well, like all kind of navigating like a response to their perceived understanding of their situation. Like I feel like that could be too many words, but like. So I feel like the world is like people doing their own things and that kind of bumping up against each other's interests and concerns like all the time, and like not doing a great job of talking about like what those interests or concerns are in like an open and like direct way. Yeah. So I feel like that kind of is like I don't know what makes me interested in people and like their backgrounds. I would say like at a high level. I don't know. I feel like at a high level is unnecessary there, but yeah. So. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that so much. Now doing a bit of a rewind for myself and the audience. I'm interested in hearing about your journey from college to crypto. Hearing you tell me about your journey into the space I started the fall. It was probably like early last summer was a good inspiration for me. And I feel like my mom is still like, what are you doing, Maceo? Why don't you have a job? Like, what are you doing with your life? Like, you're spending money like you have a job and living like you have a job. You're not like working. And I told her I was coming to interview you today. And I was like, Parker's actually, I feel like a proof of concept that I could like do a lot of learning this year and maybe like find a job in like a world, something that's really interesting to me, despite having like a philosophy background in undergrad. And she was like, interesting. And so I'm excited for her to get to tune into the episode and like hear what you have to say and learn a little bit more about you. And just for like other people to get to learn, I guess, about like your journey to the space. Because I feel like not a lot of people take time after school to make a transition. I feel like it's like very uncommon. Usually with my peers, I would say especially. Like I feel like I hear people say they took a gap year in college or like took time off. Then like they studied something that wasn't like directly aligned with like what they're doing now, and they took time to like figure out like where they saw themselves fitting in. So yeah.
Totally. I mean, to respond directly to like your sort of concern, I'm a pretty firm believer from my personal experience that like what you study does not determine your path. And I think it actually really boils down to like having the hunger and drive and consistency and like intention and integrity to break into whatever you want to break into or learn whatever you want to learn. And like that is much more deterministic of your path than just what you study in college. So I studied something called critical theory and social justice, which was only offered at the university I went to. So very unique major. And also, most people in my major took a very different path than I did. So most people that studied CTSJ go on to work for a nonprofit or do some kind of like activism, lawyer sort of job. And for a while, I actually thought I was going to be a lawyer, which is funny. But throughout my university and time at university, I was really interested in just systems of power in our society and like how they're shaped, how they're formed, how power is maintained and deployed, and like the different types or forms of power that exist in our society. And when I started learning more about tech, which I was never exposed to like growing up in my family or even in my peers, I was just fascinated, especially like by bleeding edge technology, and so sort of more like deep tech. So I was like really into like AI, 3D printing, like cellular agriculture, biotech, and really saw like an intersection between a lot of the questions that I was asking in my studies about how power is shaped and how society like changes with it, and what I was kind of learning in my own time. And so, it was sort of like the first time that I felt really, really like intrinsically like just like lit on fire by what I was learning. And I would just spend so much time online, like on these like weird forums reading out tech. And so I was like, okay, like I definitely need to try working in this and doing stuff in it. So started working for a few startups, worked for an early stage VC more focused on the biotech space, and really from there like fell in love with just like startups and entrepreneurship and thinking about the future, as well as working with founders. So yeah, after getting that experience kind of under my belt, I'd known about crypto for a while, and I like knew that it existed, but I didn't really know much about it. And I kind of just assumed like, oh, this isn't for me. Like, I'm not really interested in this. But once I started diving deeper and doing more research into blockchain technology itself and like the underlying tech of cryptocurrency, that's really when I had my light bulb moment. And I really, I was like, holy shit, like just like all these other technological inflection points, like AI, the World Wide Web, computing, blockchain is also that, and it's going to change and transform, or has the potential to transform how we operate, not only like our financial system, but like data sharing, privacy, even like supply chains and manufacturing. So after really thinking about and seeing like the value of blockchain technology and also cryptocurrency, which brings a more open and accessible and equitable financial system, in my opinion, to the world, I got really excited. And so started doing more work in that space on the side. At the time, I was working as a chief of staff of a fintech startup, and launched their first crypto media arm there. So I was doing a podcast, interview series.
You were interviewing people on a podcast?
Yes, yes, both written and in podcast form.
That's cool.
Yeah, and so I was like meeting all these like entrepreneurs and founders and learning about what they were building and what they were excited about in the space. And so that was also really helpful for my learning. And then around the same time, started getting involved with Dina and Natasha at Boys Club. And I thought the combination of like working on both of those projects would kind of like satisfy this craving I had to be deeper in crypto, but quickly felt like, okay, I need to be working this full time. And I also want to be around people that are way smarter than me and like know way more than me, which like at my previous organization, I didn't really feel like people were sort of coming to me as like the crypto expert. And I was like, okay, like this is great, but also like I don't want to be the expert in the room, right? Yeah. So yeah, I really started thinking out like, okay, what's next for me here? Like I've spent, several years as an operator. I was like working all throughout college. I was on financial aid there. I was doing like a school job and then working at startups part-time. And before that, I've been working since I was like 14. Like I've done like so many random jobs, like hairdresser and like receptionist. And I used to like work in this like basement and just like answer phone calls for room service all day. And it was like horrible down there. But like the point is basically, I was finally like, okay, I found this space and area that I'm really excited about and like mobilized around, right? Which is crypto. And then also like the sector within that I'm obsessed with, which is like startups and like business. And I love working with founders. I love thinking about the future and thinking about what's next. And I also love high risk environments. So after gaining a few years of experience as an operator and really feeling like, okay, I've reached this point where I really know how to be an operator. I know how to be a chief of staff. I know how to manage a team. I know how to manage a product and manage a roadmap and ship stuff. I was like, okay, I want to challenge myself more and go back into investing. I already had that experience working for a bit as an early stage VC and really like that. And I was like, I want to do this in crypto. Also to get like a sort of better ecosystem-wide view of what was being built in the space. So yeah, I looked for like an early stage VC. I think early stage is fun because later stage you're evaluating much more like financial metrics and target numbers. And at that point you're investing when like the business and idea is already established and has product market fit. Mm-hmm. At the early stage, you're usually investing in products and businesses that don't. And in my opinion, like that's also when your deployment of capital like has the most impact for founders. And I also knew like I love working with founders, and early stage is like the best way to really get to build those relationships from the ground up and like help them scale their businesses. So I also knew I wanted to like be investing internationally. There's some VCs that, for example, only invest in New York City or only invest in America. And I was like, I think, the international scope feels important to me, especially for being in crypto specifically. And then I wanted to work with a team that was like really crypto native and that I also just vibed with. I've always liked working on small teams, so I was looking for that. Luckily found, an amazing team at FinTech Collective. I'm on their DeFi fund. And so we invest early stage internationally with like a DeFi focused up and down the stack from like infra to middleware to protocols to the app layer. And then we also have a liquid token strategy. So that's been like an amazing experience. And I would say, I love thinking about the future of crypto and what's next and analyzing startups and businesses. But most of all, like what's most fulfilling to me from that work is really getting to work with the founders in our portfolio and getting to like build relationships with them and like see them succeed and grow. And that makes me really happy, and it's really fulfilling.
I got that, like being able to play like a meaningful role in like seeing companies blossom and become what like they're out to do and accomplish is like, it means something to you. I think that's super dope. Can I ask like how you found, I feel like, I guess still rewinding, I feel like you said so much, but I want to hear, I guess, like how is it CTSJ is what you studied in school? Like, how did you find yourself in that field of study? And how does that like influence or inform like how you approach the work you do now?
It's a great question. I honestly don't remember specifically how I found CTSJ. Mm-hmm. I narrowed down my college search mainly by looking for small class sizes because I love building relationships with my professors and also like having like discussions. So I knew I wasn't really looking for like a lecture style university. Yeah. And then CTSJ, I mean, like it's super interdisciplinary. So everything from like philosophy to anthropology to ethnography and other kinds of fields. So I was really attracted to that. And then also just the overarching sort of thematic topics and interests that like it really resonated with me of like studying systems of power and looking at culture and like how power and culture like relate. I did a lot of studying of like different social movements, different.
How is that? Like studying social movements?
Really cool. I mean, that's also really informed like how I think about DAOs as well. So I think like at least for my kind of like the DAO nerd side of like what I'm interested in, like I definitely see like a very contingent theme there of being interested in how people organize and unionize and mobilize and like the causes they do that around. And then also like what methodologies and systems are most effective for coordination and also like for movements to achieve their ultimate objectives.
And so do you see like indie movements as being particularly like impactful or inspiring to you? And like, do you see any particular structures that they employ to be successful that stand out to you, or like inform how you think about effective coordination?
One thing that really stands out to me that I always reflect on was actually this in this course I took called Critical Legal Studies, and we were looking at how culture influences the law and how the law influences culture. And that's actually the class that like made me want to be a lawyer. But basically, one thing we did was looking at all these case studies, and they were case studies around basically like legal advocates for different communities. So, for example, like different types of underserved communities in America that activist lawyers would go into and try to like help them, like help make their communities better, help make their schools better, like understand their needs and make policies better to inform and create policies to better serve those people. So one of the most interesting findings there was the most effective way to do this was not to go into the community and only look at the data and spend a bit of time there and then do more academic work trying to create the policies. It was actually spending longer periods of time immersed in the communities and talking to people over time, like about their daily lives, about their needs, and involving those people in the process of building the policies. So basically like not working in a silo, and also taking less of like a saviorist, for lack of a better word, approach and more of like an integrated approach of like putting the community voices first versus like the expert voice of like the person doing that work.
Yeah.
And I think that's really relevant. Another learning in a different sort of case study I did was more around what leads to the ultimate like disintegration or dissemination of different social movements.
Wait, when you say disintegration, what do you mean?
So like, for example, like Occupy Wall Street, not around today. Why?
I don't have an answer.
So on the side of governance, like one learning was like, okay, community members start to atrophy and leave the organization if they don't feel like their voice is heard. So like if someone puts forth like a proposal or an idea and it never gets follow up, like even if it's rejected and that person doesn't get feedback on why or like have an understanding of why, or there isn't like a venue to facilitate that communication and follow up, it's likely that person will leave. And I think this is something like, for example, like DAOs can learn this today. And so I think like in DAO design and governance design, it's important to like create a pipeline where the proposal system doesn't just end when consensus is reached or the vote is closed. It actually goes a step further to help that person understand like and get feedback on their proposal moving forward. Yeah.
And so that's like being able to essentially track like the public sentiment around the implications of a proposal that's made, if it's like, I guess, moves forward to like actuality.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
That makes sense. That's cool. And like you were also talking about feeling like you develop like the soft skills, like manage a team and stuff like that. What was that like? Like, I feel like soft skills are super important, being able to like work with people, being able to direct people, manage people's promises, timelines. I feel like, yeah, DAO is a big coordination game, but I feel like any team, like project and objective, it's easy to come up against friction, attitudes, egos, things like that. And so like, what kinds of, like, how did you, I guess, navigate developing those skills? What were like critical realizations? Like, what were cool projects that kind of challenged you to like, I guess, sort that out?
Yeah, I've had a few mentors and they really, really helped me just across like everything in my career, honestly. So less like, I've never received like formal management training, but like having such amazing mentors and people that have like supported me in different ways has also given me a better understanding of like ways that I can support other people that I'm working with or managing. And also just doing a lot of like reading and research on like what makes people feel valuable and heard. And I really make a mental note of also like even just in general conversation or communication with someone, how can you frame feedback or a suggestion or an idea in a productive way that helps the other person receive it well. So for example, like this is kind of a weird example. I have this best friend named Haley, and we met on Twitter, and we're like really, really close, and we talk to each other about everything, and like she's given me just like great advice on everything from work to relationships to friendships. And as soon as we started getting close and like I started really opening up to her and she was like giving me advice or just we were just having conversations about different things, I really immediately like noticed like, wow, this person like knows how to communicate really well. And like, for example, like if she like disagrees with the way I'm approaching something or thinks like in a situation, like it would be a better outcome for me to do one thing versus another. Like she has a really good way of framing it in a way that where I feel like she's being very receptive to me and also like framing advice or framing sort of suggestions or ideas in a way that where I always feel like, okay, like this person's like on my team. Like they're not telling me what to do because they think I'm doing something wrong. They're like on my team. And I think building that level of trust with your team is also like really important. So yeah, I know I didn't give like super specific like points or anecdotes there, but I think like the main things that come to mind from like a first principles level would be being really transparent. Like for example, like whenever we're having like a discussion about something in boys club, sometimes it's hard because like sometimes someone will have an idea and like I really disagree with it, or I have a specific concern about like if we executed that, like how that could be perceived in a negative way or whatever. Like I will like voice that concern because I also think it's about like establishing like intent and knowing like, okay, like if someone disagrees or someone has like a differing opinion, it's like it's because we all want a good outcome for this thing that we're trying to achieve or build together.
Yeah.
So like I think building a baseline understanding of and like sort of level setting like intentions across the team is also important, because if you don't trust your teammates and don't trust that they're coming from a good place, like no one will ever be able to like really speak up. And I think like over time, like cracks will really start to form that ultimately like will not help your goal or your team move forward.
That makes a lot of sense. I think it's cool you met your best friend on Twitter. I think that's like a fun thing. Shout out to Haley.
Shout out Haley. We met at a Milady rave actually.
At a Milady rave is what you said?
Yeah, Milady.
Milady rave. What's that?
It's like an NFT.
Okay. And what's that? What kind of project is that? Like, what is? You can say more about it. Like, I'm unfamiliar.
It's complicated.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't own a Milady, but yeah, we each had like different Twitter friends that we met through, and yeah, she's awesome. She's the best. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's super tough. And I'm like, my brain is like tracking. Like, how did you come to find your mentors? I feel like a lot of people talk about how important mentors are for them in their professional career and just like personal lives. Like where do those people show up for you? Like in work and start like in some of your internships in school.
Yeah. So like when I really like discovered my interest in tech and startups and entrepreneurship and investing, I was like, fuck, like shit, like I don't have anyone around me that's interested in this or knows anything about this. Like not my family, not my peers, not my teachers. And honestly, like during that period of my life, I felt like really, really alone because I didn't have anyone to talk to about my interests. And within those general circles I was in, like my interests of like tech and entrepreneurship and startups were kind of more like frowned upon. And so I felt really lonely, and I really was like, okay, like how can I better understand the path I need to take to break into this industry, and also like how to most effectively like deploy my skill set in a way that can have high value and impact in a way that also feels fulfilling, like for the work that I'm doing. And I was like, I just need to like find people to talk to like in these industries. So I started doing a bunch of research, got a Twitter, like started just like honestly like reaching out to people on Twitter, meeting people on Twitter, started like going on LinkedIn, looking for people who graduated from my university that were in fields I wanted to work in or in similar tangential fields, and literally reaching out to like anyone I could talk to, just saying like, hi, I'm Parker, like I'm a junior in university and I'm really excited and passionate about this industry and like want to learn more about how you broke into it and what your experience has been like in this role and in this sector. If you have like 15 minutes of your time that I can take in the next 2 weeks, I would really appreciate that. And I was really surprised about like the majority of people were open to taking a call and talking to me. And that like means a lot, still does, because I really got a sense of, you know, what roles, what different kinds of roles existed in the industries I was excited about, what they were like, what kind of skills I would need to build from there. And I literally had this like spreadsheet of like hundreds of people, like, and like color coded it, had like notes, had like dates of like when I was reaching out to them. I mean, I'm
super organized.
I'm a very like methodical person. So yeah, but it was really helpful. And it also allowed me to like sometimes like, oh, if I was like learning about this new topic, I could go back into this spreadsheet and like be like, oh yeah, that person was like working on something similar. Let me talk to them. And so many people were just like so gracious with like their time and energy. And I was like literally this like college student that like barely knew anything about anything. But yeah, through that I found like 2 really good mentors. One of them, sort of, I wasn't even thinking about having a mentor before, and we were just talking, and he was like a alumni of my school, and we were just on this call, and at one point he was just like, so like, have you ever thought about like getting a mentor? And I was like, honestly, like not really. And he was like, well, I've had one, it's really beneficial. If you want to think about like what kinds of things you would want to get out of a mentor or learn from one, or like what you would need from one, then like let's set up a second call. And then he really helped me like just throughout like my job application process of like thinking about like how to strategize around like different interviews and like how to build my resume and like convey things on it, and all those like really basic things that have been really helpful today. Another one was more in the crypto industry, and she wasn't actually a formal mentor, but I kind of consider her that because she really impacted my trajectory and journey, just in the fact that she really believed in me. And she's also a venture capitalist in crypto. And I somehow like stumbled across just like this website she has about herself. And I was like, wow, okay, like she used to be a lawyer, which I thought I was going to do. She's really interested in writing. She's produced all this cool content, and really like resonated with a lot of her, like her journey and story. And, I think like the way that I sort of see her as a mentor is like I went through really an uphill battle to like break into the industry that I am. And it took a lot of like pervasiveness because like I don't come from a traditional background. And I would say like most people going into VC, like most VCs are looking for like very specific things, like an Ivy League university, business school, like you've worked at an investment bank. Like I didn't have any of that. And so I was feeling like really discouraged, just like hitting a wall. And every time I would like get rejected from somewhere, she would just be like, don't give up. Like, here's like a new like job opening I saw, apply to it. And I always like kept thinking to myself, like, why does she keep sending me these applications if I just keep getting rejected? But she was like, all you need is one yes. Like, I know you're going to be like so good at this and you can do it. And just having someone that was already in that position and had that experience that really believed in me, like really, really was empowering. And like, I might have like given up sooner if not. And so, yeah, like I hope, you know, I have like 1 or 2 kind of like mentees now. And I really hope like that, you know, the conversations we have and like the resources I provide to them like can be similarly empowering, because I like really want to like give that back to other people who are like came from sort of a similar background as me.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds like they left you feeling really supported. I think it's cool that this person was like kept you motivated, kept you feeling inspired and feeling like reassured that you could break into this space, like find work in this space. I think that's super dope, super important. Yeah, I think like hearing you talk about your like approach to like finding professional work in this space, I think is super inspiring. And definitely, like I said, talking to you like last summer is definitely very affirming that like even if I didn't feel like I had like the wherewithal or the know-how to like find a role in this space, I definitely feel like my taking the past year to learn more about like the Web3 music space, that's really what was interesting to me. Like I'm a rapper. That's kind of what got me interested, not like in crypto. My friend Drew got me interested in crypto, but my friend Gabe as well. I won't neglect to say that, but I think like learning more about like the way the music industry, which in my opinion seems to be ripe for disruption. I feel like there's a lot of grievances around like the streaming model. There's a lot of grievances around like contracts and like how do artists navigate contracts or feel like they have leverage walking into contract proposals, being under resourced frequently. And I was like really curious in like how can this technology be disruptive to the music industry and like support artists. And that's kind of been like my thing. And I feel like in a world of people who are like NFTs are nothing, Maceo, you're wasting your time. Like you want to get a job in the music industry and you're like studying crypto, like that seems a bit like counterintuitive. I definitely feel like it has been a year of really me building out my perspective on like that landscape and like who's building what and are they building things that we need and do they have product market fit and like is any of this practical. And I feel like Water and Music, shout out to them, shout out to Sherry, shout out to their core team, Brody, Diana, Alex, and I feel like, and Kat, and if I'm missing someone, Young, hello. And I think like finding communities like Water and Music, which is really like my first like I would say DAO where I could be engaged, DAO or not DAO, up in the air, but where I could be engaged and make conversation, really see like how do we coordinate for like shared desired outcomes was really influential in my like entering the space and getting more versed in technology and also just like in the music industry more broadly. I still don't feel like I have like a traditional understanding of the music industry, but I have a book I'm hoping to read this summer. I'm reading this summer, hoping is the wrong word. It's about making time. And I feel like getting to know like people who work in the industry and can kind of help me understand like really, even if I don't like know what kind of role I want, like I love like I could talk to people all day. Like if this were my job, like I'd be sold. If I could just be a music journalist and like I'd like pack up my things and like that's my life now. But that's not like what I do professionally right now. I don't work at all. I was working at a human resources tech startup focused on racism in the workplace, which was cool. Like I love like the idea of supporting people, but it also felt kind of counterintuitive because I feel like if a workplace really cares about problems, like it won't be a challenge to like get them to start thinking about how they actively create structures to like preserve and like not like preserve, but like to optimize for giving people a good work experience. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you're trying to sell them a product that like helps them cater to something they're not really like heavily invested in. It's like I feel like, in my opinion, you're better off just thinking about, like, where can I find people who are actually invested in trying to solve this problem or keep it from happening? Totally. Or create a safe work environment as opposed to places that maybe just want feedback, but, like, aren't thinking so long-term about how to, like create sustainable practices that actually leave people feeling wanted and, like you say, like, valued. But what I was saying that to say is that I feel like the community component, especially with Web3, I feel like is so important. So I feel like the learning curve can be so intimidating. And so I think it's super dope that you took time to make all those calls. I feel like over the year, I've been making like so many like calls, reaching out to people on Twitter, asking them about like how did they get into the space, like what interests them, what are they excited by, what do you do for work, but also like what do you do for fun and like to relax and like what's your background and stuff like that, like trying to get engaged with people. And also read the room on like should I be in this crypto space in the first place, because like I said, there's definitely a lot of friction like in my like friend groups about like what do you do at these crypto NFT meetups, what do you get from that? And I'm like, I get to meet people and I get to hear like what they think about this space. I think if they're being critical, like that's weird and that's like their problem. And I think like I'm so happy that you're in the crypto space, and I think you're like taking all of the right steps. Like I told you, like on our first call, you were like, what should I be doing to like break into this space more? And I was like, keep doing what you're doing. Like talk to people. And like I've seen the way you're super involved with like, even just like through like Boys Club, like you like come to our meetups, you come to our events, like you're like very active in the Discord. Like it makes me like so happy. And I think like as baseline as it sounds, like most people don't have the intrinsic motivation to actually be involved and engaged and take that self-initiative. So I think like the fact that you do and that you are doing that is already like 50% of the work. And like it's just about like building skills, building experiences, building your network, and getting really clear on like what kind of like role you want, right? Like in this industry. But I definitely think, in my opinion, like it's so worthwhile for you to be here and be doing this. And
even just like this podcast, I think is like super important, and like the mission behind it is super important. And
thank you.
I really admire the work that you're doing. So I think like, fuck the haters, honestly. Like people will always like question you. Like you're never going to make everyone happy with what you're doing. And honestly, like the sense that I get from what you've said about like sort of some of like the just lines of questioning from your friends and stuff, like gives me a sense of maybe these people are really a little bit like envious that you have like this thing that you're really interested in, these communities you're involved in. And I think like trust yourself and trust your gut, and like everything else will fall in place like around you.
Oh, I appreciate that. I like that end quote, fuck the haters. I'm a fan of the sentiment. And I hear all what you're saying, I guess. And what I guess is exciting to me, I feel like in this conversation specifically, is kind of, I feel like so much of my conversations with people, networking and just connecting with people, have been around like, what's your take on like the broader ecosystem, the landscape, like trying to figure out like, what should I be interested in, like what's actually happening, like not being a super like tech savvy, like I guess I'll say like tech informed person, or like technologically knowledgeable person. Like I don't understand like the back end of so much of like crypto. And so it's like, what should I be attentive to? What should I not be attentive to? Like what's noise, what's not noise? But even then, like that aside, in like the Web3 music space, like what's actually happening here? Like with Water and Music, I was interviewing people who are collecting music entities, which was cool because there's people who are like quote unquote the users, people who are like acting as patrons. But it also didn't seem super sustainable. But it definitely did open my eyes to like opportunities for more digital engagement of fans in general. Like there's definitely something there that is happening that like people are happy to do. And so it's like, how can you like help people with those kinds of interests, or like that desire to interact more with like artists that they admire? Like how can you double down on that offering to people? And so I feel like that's been really cool. And I feel like what I see as an opportunity for myself now is kind of being more like role oriented. Like now that I feel like I do understand the landscape, and I do understand that like I'm interested in community management. I'm interested in like working with artists to help them like grow their brands, but also find other people that are interested in supporting them. That's kind of why I want to kind of co-create like a music collective alongside the podcast, as like a way to like bridge the gap, I feel like, between like this global community of people in Web3 and music NFTs and like NFTs broadly, who are like creating stuff, but don't necessarily feel like they have like institutional support behind them, which I feel like is like a game changer in every creative industry, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But I could be wrong. But to me, it seems like it's really a real big value add. And so trying to figure out like, how do I do that? But also like, what are the kinds of roles that help me learn how to do that? It's definitely, I feel like, a question I can be more proactive about asking as I go into new conversations, as opposed to like being so interested in like, how are things at this platform? What is this platform's role in the space and stuff like that? So I appreciate you sharing all of that. That's really what I mean to say. And myself aside, I'm interested in like getting back to the present. What's your take on where we are now in crypto and like the bear market? A lot of people would say the space is irrelevant. Like you could say the haters, but also just like people who maybe haven't been super attentive and haven't like found themselves with time to go down the rabbit hole, or just like the right incentives. And so, yeah, what's your take on like what's so right now? And are you worried about public sentiment around crypto broadly?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we're still really early. I think that having like a core belief in this technology and like what it can bring about, and like the real potential for that is like integral to just staying in this industry, because there is so much doubt and fear and skepticism. Yeah, I think we're really early. I think like right now, I mean, the perception is like not good right now. We're just to like call it the obvious, we're in a bear market, like after FTX, after Terra Luna, like after like all of the hacks and everything, like the public perception is really bad.
Yeah.
I think like it's also really magnified in scale right now, because it's moved beyond just like the public media perception and also more into like politics. And I think like, you know, unfortunately, crypto is really seen as like a partisan issue right now.
What do you mean a partisan issue?
So like basically, right, between like Democrats and Republicans, like crypto is being weaponized as like sort of like an issue to be like for or against. And I don't think I think crypto is bipartisan, and I think like it's not a single-sided issue.
Yeah.
I actually think it's been, for me, like it's been really disappointing to see the side of like the Democrats on really like an anti-crypto campaign and tear. I don't think crypto needs to be politicized in that way. And I also think that crypto can and is helping push forward a lot of the values that Democrats purport to believe in. So like democracy, equity, leveling the playing field for people that have been historically and traditionally underserved by the traditional banking system. And it's sort of just being weaponized as like a political issue. So like one data point around that is, while there's this whole tearing campaign against crypto on like the Dem side and like from like Joe Biden in the White House today, there was this really interesting report and study released recently in Coinbase, released by Coinbase in February of 2023. They surveyed over 2,000 Americans in the U.S. And actually showed that 80% of the Americans they surveyed think that the global financial system unfairly favors powerful interests. And they also found that right now between 17%, according to Pew Research Center, and 20%, according to Coinbase, of Americans own cryptocurrency. And then if you actually break that down by political party or affiliation, crypto ownership is actually pretty consistent across the board. So 18% for Republicans, 22% for Democrats, and 22% for independents. And I think that really does speak to like how crypto is a bipartisan issue. Then if you break that down right by racial demographic, according to a recent study by Pew Research Center, also conducted in February of 2023, out of the 17% of adults that they found in the U.S. that have invested in crypto, own crypto, traded crypto, it actually breaks down as 24% for Asians, 21% for Blacks, and 21% for Latinos, and only 14% for whites. So I think that's really interesting. I think there's like a general narrative that's being pushed forward and played out right now within like the political arena and like context of the upcoming 2024 election, that crypto is really only something that Republicans care about, or that like a certain affluent, very homogeneous group of like tech bros cares about. But if you look at the actual data that like I just described, like that's not the case. And I really think it's like important to like clarify the data and clarify the facts. I saw this like recent tweet by the White House that made me feel very angry and upset. That was like basically saying, like it was literally like the White House Twitter account posted, and it was like, crypto will never have parity with the US dollar. It's dangerous. It does not promote like any kind of like social good or good into the world. And I'm just like, this is a one-sided opinion. This is not a fact. And what really like made me feel upset is like the fact that I believe like everyone should like be able to make up their own opinion about how they think crypto like should be used in the world, if it's good or bad. Like that's up for personal opinion, but not giving the American people and like tweeting from a platform and literally like institution of such authority over the American people and not giving them the full facts about like what benefits crypto might have, or just saying an opinion as a fact. I don't think that's like chill. So I think like we're in this moment where, you know, crypto's down, market's bad, public perception is bad, crypto's being politicized as a one-party issue, which I also think is bad given that we live in like an extremely divisive and polarized society right now. Yeah. I think like, you know, it's tough, but I think what's really important is just for like the people in this space to continue like using their platforms to share like why crypto is important to them, and also just to continue building. And there's a lot of like real world on the ground, like utilization and adoption and value drivers that exist today that we talk about less, at least like less in the Western world, but that I do think are really important and really like use cases that really speak to like why crypto is important, why it matters, and like why it should, you know, we should continue to like put resources into moving this industry forward.
Well, I appreciate you sharing all of that. I feel like kind of a dunce because I didn't like tap record for this video on my phone, and so there's been no video whatsoever so far, and I didn't want to like tap it and throw you off, but I have tapped it now, and it is happening now. And that aside, like, what do you see as like the real value drivers like in this space, like right now? Like, I feel like what's exciting to me, like I think what you were saying about people saying like why the space is important to them is super important. And like for me, like going to ETH Denver, like I was way less engaged by like the state of music Web3, honestly. I was like, oh, these are people who are like my age starting startups about like stuff that I'm interested in, but like with as much music industry experience as me and there's like more money, and like not to say they don't have a better understanding than me, but I feel like what was really exciting was like the conversation around decentralized public goods, being able to go to like Shilling Point, being able to like see Kevin Owocki talk to him, see people talk to him about like how these things can start to take more prominence in communities like across the US, but also around the world, I think was super exciting. And even just like being in like the corner of like the public goods, I guess, space at the conference, like setting, I don't know what to call it. I thought that was super cool, being able to meet people at like from Gitcoin, from Giveth, and just like seeing people really committed to like how do we use the technology to benefit the public interest, I think kind of got me more interested in that conversation. Like in undergrad, I studied moral psychology, like psych and philosophy, and I'm in the world of like maybe I'll go to grad school for social work and like think about like how do nonprofits work and like how can I be involved in one, maybe public administration, and like how can we run nonprofits effectively. But also like I feel like seeing that stuff got me more interested in like what is the intersection of these two things in the first place. And like I feel like it would be super cool to go into grad school with that kind of context in mind of like what does an ideal nonprofit that leverages this technology and like these like tools for coordination effectively look like, and like what are the pros and cons even. I think that could be a cool thing to look more into for myself. And so what do you see as like the main value drivers, like not just here in the US, but like around the world, as you say?
Yeah, I think on the ground today, like when you look at where crypto is actually being adopted and where it's being used, a lot of that is, and most of that's not happening in the Western world. So like here we are, right, in New York, in the US, like when we talk about crypto, we talk about NFTs, we talk about DAOs, and when you actually look at the data, I think where the value is really being driven right now, we can see that in emerging markets. So actually in 2022, if you look at global settlement volume, stablecoins had a global settlement volume of $7.4 trillion.
What is a stablecoin, and like what is settlement volume? Like I know what a stablecoin is, but can you explain those two things?
A stablecoin is a cryptocurrency utilizing the blockchain that is pegged to the price or value of a fiat currency.
Thank you. And then
settlement volume is the amount of volume that has been settled in transactions for a specific currency. So stablecoins across like the whole year of 2022 had a total settlement volume of 7.4 trillion. MasterCard, to put that in context, had a total settlement volume of 2.2 trillion. American Express 1.1, and Discover had 200 billion. So actually, stablecoins had significantly higher, like over 2 times higher settlement volume than the biggest settlement volume of the biggest credit card company in America, which is pretty fucking insane.
That is wild, yeah.
Yeah, and we're seeing, you know, both strong adoption in both developing and developed markets, but I think in developing markets and emerging markets specifically, we're really seeing value being driven is using cryptocurrency and stablecoins in particular as a hedge against inflation, and as a non-sovereign store of value, and also for sending remittances. And so there's a lot of really interesting research on this. I'm like planning to publish a paper on this soon.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And when I was recently in Mexico City and Bogota, I was like meeting with a lot of founders that are building startups around the utilization of stablecoins, whether it's for store of value, whether it's for payroll, whether it's for banking and lending and payments and peer-to-peer transactions. And once again, like I think it's really important to take like a worldly perspective outside of just America, and realize like we are dealing with inflation. Like we are barely dealing with inflation, like as compared to other countries, especially like in Latin America, for example. So to give you some more like specifics on that, in Venezuela, for example, national currency has depreciated by over 100,000% from December 2014 to September 2022.
Wow.
And inflation is like at an all-time high in the 5 biggest economies in Latin America. And so, you know, there's also like this issue of authoritarianism as well, whether like in those countries or elsewhere, and people are turning to cryptocurrencies as a way to actually like own their assets themselves and not have them be like controlled by the government, which I think is really important and cool. So yeah, Argentina, as another inflation example, they're hitting a yearly increase in inflation of upwards of 99.9% in 2023 as compared to the year prior. And so like this is like
100%.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And like this is like a real issue that's like affecting people's day-to-day lives. And like when they're getting paid out in like their local currencies, like they don't know what the actual value of that is going to be.
Yeah.
Right. So like there's, for example, like a lot of startups like working to try to get payouts in stable coins, which are often like a preferred method because like there's a much higher like stability of like the value and worth and rate of that currency than their local currency.
Yeah, and so, their work. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of like use cases outside of the US and like that's really where like the value is being driven today. And like that's like a just use case and narrative and phenomena that I think is really important to bring more attention to just to like the general public, especially in America, of like, you know, obviously there's a lot of people out there who like are not in crypto and think it's a scam or just think it's about trying to like get rich quick. And it's like when you actually look at like how crypto is being used in other places in the world, like you really see like the impact that it's having like on their day-to-day life. And so I think that's like a really, really important, you know, story to tell. And it's really important that we like increase more awareness of that and then also like try to like allocate more resources to helping like build those startups and economies.
Yeah, to serve those people and help them start to navigate like those, I guess, problems more effectively, identify like long-term and sustainable solutions. Like, as you say, are sovereign and separate from like the politics they have to navigate anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's super dope. I guess kind of like wrapping up that conversation, like I really do appreciate you sharing and like helping people get more informed. Like you are doing the research, you're getting ready to put out a paper. I'll make sure to link that in the show notes when you send it to me. I'll add it. Like, so yeah, definitely do. And I guess I'll read it as well. I say I guess, but like I will read it. And as you know, I'm really interested in the music industry and always eager to learn about like what people are listening to, or like just tuning into generally, regardless of the medium. And so my final question is about like content, written content, like who are the writers you enjoy like reading right now? Like as you've been like getting ready to like put out this paper that you've been working on, like who have you been reading? But also like what podcasts you listen to, what movies do you watch, documentaries, what shows, what music you listen to? Like that's kind of like what's there for me right now. What's like the soundtrack to Parker Jay-Pachirat's life this year?
Let me like pull up my Spotify.
Yeah, please. I invite you to give us the truth.
I'm really into like techno, house.
Is what you said, yeah.
Top of the list right now, Fred again. Very controversial.
Why? Why is it controversial?
I don't know. There's like all of these memes around Fred again. I like him. I've been listening to a lot of Barry Can't Swim.
Barry Can't Swim?
Super good.
Who's Barry Can't Swim? Like, do you have any, like...
I don't have context.
That's okay.
I just know it's really good music.
Okay.
So.
Do you have a song shout out?
Sonder.
Barry Can't Swim.
Burial. Archangel. It's a good song.
Okay.
One Tablespoon is really good. Let's see what else. Tierra Whack. Always good.
Only Child's a great song.
Only Child is so good.
Do you have a song, though, that in mind, aside from Only Child?
Fruit Salad.
Okay.
So good.
There's going to be a Parker Jay-Pachirat, We Them Niggas little playlist, so you guys can tune in the show notes.
Oh, cool. Fruit Salad would be a good one.
It'll be on there. No, it's done.
David Bowie, MF Doom.
What songs, though? Like, you got to give at least one song.
Oh, okay. MF Doom, 10 Years Later.
Okay.
Really good. What's the other one I just said?
David Bowie.
David Bowie. There's so many good David Bowie songs. Oh my god.
You can listen more than
well,
one.
The last one I was listening to is Rebel.
Okay.
Classic. Hold on, let's see what else. I've been like really building out my playlists lately, so.
Oh, we love that, though.
Yeah.
Vibes Curator.
Oh, Daniel Avery.
Okay.
58500 is the song. Ross from Friends.
Ross from Friends is a song by this Daniel Avery?
Oh, no, Ross from Friends is a different artist.
Okay.
Like techno, really good.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see.
Do you have a song for Ross from Friends that I should...
Talk to Me, You'll Understand.
Okay.
Classic song. Jesse Brew, Roach Fingers. OK Kaya, Mother's Nature's Bitch.
Okay, guys, Mother's Nature's Bitch.
Max Cooper, Parting Ways. Portable, Surrender. Ishi Vu, This Is Your Life. That's like a very like Berghain, like good club song. Christine W, Feel What You Want. Oh my god, DJ Seinfeld. How could I forget? DJ Seinfeld is fire.
Okay.
Too Late for You and Me is a good place to start there. Sexy Sushi, Sex Appeal, Muramasa. This track has Muramasa, Shy Girl, Channel Trace. My bad. Holla Back Bitch, super good. I'll just give one more by DJ Seinfeld, which is These Things Will Come to Be. It's a really good song.
All right. Well, I appreciate you giving me like a thick list. I feel like it's going to be a good playlist. I like the Ross from Friends and the DJ Seinfeld. I think that's like fun names. I do like Muramasa. My friend Seth just went to go see Shy Girl like a few weeks ago as well.
Shy Girl is so good. Heaven by Shy Girl is also a good one.
It's on there now as well. Booyah. And what about like what you've been reading? Like, yeah, are you a reader person? Like, are you constantly reading? What does that look like for you? Like leisure?
Yeah, I read a lot. There's like a few newsletters that I read very regularly.
Okay, yeah.
I also read books.
What newsletters though?
So Book Bear Express.
Okay.
By this girl named Ava. Her ad on Twitter is Noam Pomsky.
Okay.
And she also has really good tweets. Pirate Wires by Mike Solana. Matt Levine, Money Stuff. Bankless always. Blockworks always. Boys Club newsletter, shout out. Boys Club podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Chase Chapman's podcast, The Other Side, is super good. Chase is awesome. And also all of her writing is really good. I don't know if she has her own blog. I don't know what her blog is called, but she's done a lot of writing. It's like in her Twitter bio, and she's a really good writer and has a lot of, I think she's one of like the leading like thought leaders in DAO governance. So she's so cool. We recently became friends, and like
I'm excited for you.
Dope. We have this like recurring thing on our calendar now called Feral Drinks every like other Monday. So there's going to be some good stuff coming out of that.
Well, I'm excited for you guys. I like that. I feel like it's always good to find new friends who like keep you engaged in conversations, think about things that are interesting to you, but in like new ways as well. So I think it's cool you found a thought leader in this space to like partner up with.
Totally. Like, I love making new friends, especially friends that are like nerds about the same thing as me, you know?
Yeah.
'Cause those are just the best.
Yeah, and then you can kind of like co-process things together. I feel like it's like a preferable alternative to like ruminating about things by yourself all the time.
Exactly.
That's cool. And then like book-wise, like what have you been reading?
I've been reading this book called The Kill Chain, which is basically about the U.S. defense industry.
Okay.
I've been really interested in like privatized defense and just like what that looks like, especially after seeing companies like, SpaceX or Palantir being built that are like filling these needs and gaps. Those are, there's questions around those, but I think like the bottom line is like there's a need for those companies to be built that like the government is unable to fulfill. And the kill chain it really goes into like the incentives in the government Department of Defense system for like developing new technology and defense systems and how those incentives are misaligned. And so like why America has fallen behind in their defense like manufacturing and production, and why there's a need for like the privatized sector to like step in there. So that's been a good one. Another one that I've been reading is a book called Liquidated. It's an ethnography and sort of just like social study of investment banking and like what that world is like from like a social dynamic perspective, which is really interesting. And then Dune, I've been reading. I like to like I usually read a few books at a time and like just sort of like skip around them. Like it's not like I like will like commit to one book and read it like only read it. Like I'm not like a book monogamous. Like I won't just like read one book and then read the next one and then read the next one. It's like I like to like have a few different books going on at one time that I like can like kind of switch between. So
yeah, that makes sense. So you can switch up the vibes. I used to like as a kid carry around like I wear like cargo pants and I would have like two books in each pocket on the sides of my pants so I could like
that's
figure
so
out
cute. Oh my god,
what I was
that's
operating
like
from.
so cute.
And I met someone in like January, maybe February. At like I went to some party with my mom for one of her friends' birthdays, and this person like I was like I'm reading these books, and they're like how do you read multiple books at once? And I felt like so attacked. I was like maybe I'm like doing reading wrong, and like have been for a long time. It definitely made me a bit more insecure about my reading practices, but I like to be reading more, and I appreciate you sharing what you're reading. I think it's super dope. I think like the book you're talking about, like around incentives and like the defense world, I think it's interesting. I feel like I've begun to think a lot more about incentives since getting into crypto and like how the incentives that are allowed to persist in institutionalized environments kind of I feel like say a lot about like what that environment actually values. Yeah. And I feel like that's really like what I was talking about with like the startup I was working at. It's like if the incentives are not like to be treating people well and like to like have like an improving all the time like quality of work experience, then like it doesn't feel like you value like the work experience of like the people who are showing up to make everything possible. And I feel like it's so much more important to feel like, for me, I guess, like I'm supporting people whose values and like interests are aligned at the incentive level, because I feel like that's where like behavior is determined really, is like with the incentives.
Totally. Same. I mean, like since I've gotten into crypto, I've been thinking about incentives much more, and I'm deeply interested and obsessed with governance systems, especially in like decentralized organizations, and so much of that is about incentive design. And I don't know, it's really like changed just like my general outlook and perception. And I feel like I see governance and incentive mechanisms in like everything that I do now. And it's like my framework for the world, which is really cool and like interesting. And it's really cool. And I think just the fact of like the emphasis that the crypto industry places on incentive design, I think is going to be like really good for society at large, like compounding over time, just like having so much more attention, even from like a small subset or group of people, put on the incentives that we are like designing and deploying and maintaining in the world will hopefully help us create better outcomes.
Yeah, ideally.
And yeah, I think it's also valuable and worthwhile, like you're saying, to like question the incentives that exist and are in place around us. I think like constantly questioning things around you is super important. And like, that's definitely something I want to like instill in my kids is like question everything around you. Don't take like the first answer or like the face value answer as like the answer. And also like, don't be afraid to like think for yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's super important to like be thinking for yourself and like to be like, I think there's some places where like I want to be lazy and I default to what my parents say about things because I'm like, I don't want to do the research. But I feel like that's like most of the time, like places where I really just like don't want to do work and I'm really being lazy. But I think most of the time, and I feel like crypto is probably like, I feel like that's not true. I did like work with this, like I still do work with this organization called Landmark. And it's like where I'm doing like my podcast right now is like my game on the roll for that program. It's like a personal professional kind of development program, ideally helping you develop soft skills around like creating teams and teamwork around like things that matter to you. And so like finding engineers, like finding spaces, things like that, trying to coordinate things so they can actually happen is a big wheelhouse of that. But it like operates in like based on philosophy, like phenomenology and like existential stuff.
Cool.
And that's how I like found my major in school. And I feel like that was like, I guess my first like pretty intense like training arc, trying to like understand something. And I feel like crypto is like now like that, but like way more freeform because I'm not like in school taking philosophy classes. It's like me trying to like figure out like what should I be reading, who should I be listening to, and like who are the people telling me those things exactly, which is why I appreciate you kind of sharing like what you're paying attention to as someone that's like so deeply involved in the space.
And I'm constantly trying to figure that out too. I mean, like, yeah, I think crypto is really interesting because like there are courses and resources that exist, but ultimately like it's such a nascent industry and it's so
like fast moving,
uninstitutionalized and fast moving that it is really like self-directed. I think like also like when I first broke into the space, I was trying to take this strategy and approach of like, I'm going to try to learn about like everything in crypto. And then I was like very, very early on in that process, I was like, oh, like this is not going to work. So one thing you were saying earlier about like, oh, I'm like still learning about the kind of like fundamental baseline technologies and like principles of crypto, fundamentals of crypto. For me, like learning that really helped because then I realized, oh, like as soon as you understand like the basic infrastructure and like how it works, it's like you realize like everything in crypto is just like Legos of different things. And of course, like there's constantly new things like happening and coming out that like to learn about, right? Like liquid staking or like infinity pools or like just, you know, there's so many new things all the time, but like understanding like the building blocks of the tech for me has really helped like me quickly like grasp, not deeply understand the expert level, but quickly grasp like new projects or things that are built in the space because they're all like building on the same like set of Legos almost. If that makes sense. Also, one thing was, and you're already doing this, I think, but like really doubling down on like my areas of interest, like really like being perceptive to like, oh, what things or areas of crypto or sectors of crypto like got me the most passionate or energized or excited. And then really spending my time like doubling down into those versus just trying to learn everything has also been like very fulfilling and like rewarding. And I think you're already doing that with like the music and NFT space, which is awesome. So I would just say like, yeah, like keep doing what you're doing. There's like definitely no way to like learn everything. And so I think finding areas that you're excited about and want to contribute more to, like, and putting more energy and time and effort there is like, it yields a lot of like reward.
I appreciate you saying that. And I'm curious, like, I want to respect Daniel, I want to respect your time. So I want to wrap up in like in the next 5-10 minutes, but I'm really interested in hearing about like how, like being in Boys Club, like you're involved heavily in like the governance, like or vision, I guess, around what does governance look like? How does Boys Club move forward as a DAO? Like how is that experience informing like what you think is practical or reasonable for DAOs? But also like what's happening right now in the world of DAO governance for Boys Club?
Starting with the first question, I think most things should not be a DAO. Not everything should be a DAO. Most things should not be a DAO. And if you are a DAO, like you need to have a clear why and a clear reason of like, this is what a DAO structure like helps us achieve. And this is how it helps us achieve our objective or goal better than a traditional structure. I think also like personally, I'm very like anti like templatized DAO. I think DAOs are a puzzle and like a matrix of like incentive design, mechanism design, governance design, social coordination, and each of those pieces needs to be designed extremely like intentionally and thoughtfully and work together, like work as pieces like autonomously and independently, and then work together to reinforce one another as a whole. And it's like nearly impossible to do that and design that for what you're trying to achieve within your organization specifically if you're just using a templatized structure and also don't have the level of understanding of like how it breaks down and like the different design optionality for each of like those pieces, which I think can like lead to the ultimate like downfall or like unsuccessfulness of a DAO.
That makes sense. Yeah. So what should be a DAO? What should not be a DAO? And so why should Boys Club be a DAO?
Great question. So Boys Club as a whole shouldn't be a DAO.
Okay.
It's not. Boys Club as like the team should be a DAO because we're a Web3 native organization, and also because we are actually physically decentralized. And the way of like ideation, process generation, experimentation, execution, like all these things that we value a lot are best supported by the DAO structure. And because it's like a very collaborative, like community and team project, a DAO allows us to remove the pipelines and bottlenecks of intermediaries, and also enables our members and team members to have more ownership to execute against and experiment on like their own ideas that they put forth. So I think it's like values aligned with who we are as an organization and team, but then like the processes and like the things that a DAO structure solves for within the Boys Club team also like helps us achieve our goals and like move forward and just like be agile, more than like a traditional structure just wouldn't work for Boys Club, I think.
That makes sense. And I appreciate you kind of going into that. I'm also interested, I know like Boys Club Consulting, something that launched earlier this year. Do you know what that looks like? Like, what's the status of it? Like, how it's been going? 'Cause if I'm clear, that's like a part of the ambition to make Boys Club a business aside from like the media component.
Totally. Boys Club Consulting can't speak on that.
It's okay.
But yeah, we are like revamping the business model of Boys Club and the DAO, with the ultimate goal of like having different products and projects and services spin out of the DAO to generate revenue, and then have a portion, like a specified percentage of that revenue generated, go back into the DAO treasury once like a certain revenue and burn target is like hit per project. So it's like high level. That's the idea.
I think that's exciting. I appreciate you sharing about it. I definitely didn't want to overlook like what's happening there, being that's like how we got connected, especially. I guess to wrap things up, like thanks again so much for coming on the show. I'd love for you to share where people can keep up with you, and I'll make sure to link that in the show notes as well.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me. This is so fun. The best place to keep up with me is on Twitter, which is at Parker Jayp as in Peter. I love Twitter. I tweet on there a lot. So yeah, that's the best place to find me.
I like that you said Peter and your name is Parker. I like it. That amuses me a little bit. But perfect. So I'll link that in the show notes. And so, yeah, just one more time, thank you. I'm super stoked to have you properly be a part of my audience's journey into Web3, supporting them understanding the space, how it's evolving, and how it's relevant to everyday people, and really just like the public interest and like the future of what's happening with our social world. I feel like there's so many things that we can like ignore and not be present to if they're not introduced to us by people that we feel like we trust and care about. So I'm really trying to work to create a platform people can feel like they have the resources, feel like the space is for them. And yeah, I appreciate you playing a role in that, like once again. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for listening to another episode of We Them Niggas. I'm excited to keep making content and ideally get more feedback from you all. So definitely feel free to contact me on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever, and let me know what you think, what questions you have, what I can do to be more supportive for you. So yeah, thank you again for tuning in, and I guess I'll catch you guys next time.